guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Stream Squad. This is the special Apple Keynote edition. So I'm Angela. I'm joined as always by Whitney and Nick, and Dan, of course, is behind the camera.
How is everybody today?
Dan may or may not have a mic. We're working on that. So
I don't know. I hit the button and then just all my audio went away. So
we're live.
Yeah, we're live. This is it. So you might hear me. I've got the clip on here. You can hear me when I'm like right up into it. But if I sound like I'm in a big room, I don't know. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
He's talking a lot for us not being able to hear him.
The more he talks, the greater the chance.
Yeah.
So yesterday we had a watch party here at the office for the Apple keynote. We had a table full of food, and we were going to take a picture, but we were working so hard on the new update that came out on Monday that we ate it all before we could get a photo.
I think Angela did get a picture.
Oh, did you?
No.
Okay, yeah.
We were really hungry.
So.
It was also really good. But super excited to hear about the new announcements from Apple. They talked about their town squares, or their stores, town squares, the Apple Watch, the 4K Apple TV, new changes to the iPhone and the iPhone X,
10.
iPhone 10.
Sorry, 9.
What happened to 9?
Yeah, 9 just
They just gave up.
So we'll roll it back a little bit. We'll go through this in some more detail. Try to do a shorter version of this for those of you that weren't able to notch out 2 hours of your day to watch the Apple keynote. It's a lot to sit through. They're really weird, but it's also kind of cool to see what's going on. Going into the keynote, there were some rumors that there might be a new iPod Touch. That didn't happen.
At least not yet.
Yeah.
There's still time, right?
There were also rumors of demos for some of the new AR products and apps that developers have been working on, but those didn't show up during the keynote. So I'm sure there's some cool stuff happening out there, but maybe not quite ready just yet. And also some rumors of a Apple wearable or Apple glasses. So no news on Apple glasses. So just wanted to throw some of the rumors out there that were floating around going into the event. But we did hear about the new iPhone 8 and the iPhone X.
10.
I'm going to keep getting it wrong.
He called it 10 in the keynote. He called it the 10.
Okay, so we're going to go with Apple 10. It was really interesting because this year they started the presentation talking about their stores, the renovations, the new locations.
Making them more of a community space instead of just a place you go to shop.
Yeah, the strategy and how they have redesigned these spaces to be able to have workshops and training. And there was a special word they threw around. They're having
Today at Apple.
Today at Apple.
Today at Apple.
It sounds it's a little Stepford sounding to me personally, but Today at Apple is kind of like their cutesy way of having classes at Apple. Apple town squares, not stores, to teach people about photography and music and app development and all of that kind of fun stuff. So. And
one of the new locations is in D.C. It was a former library. It was one of the first libraries in the country. So to see Apple as a resource and their technology as a tool for creating and sharing information is kind of cool to see the little riff on that particular space. I think the opening of the Apple keynote talking about the town squares is really interesting as we move into some of the changes that will be available with the new operating system, iOS 11, and AR and mixed reality. And over the next few years, I think the way that we look at the world is going to change, the way that we interact with it, and making these stores, these squares, almost a theater where you can demo some of these new uses as they become more available, I think is going to help educate people on what's possible, and it's probably a really smart play as far as adoption and getting people to see what you can do.
Yeah, and I think too, you can't get on the internet without seeing a think piece on how technology is pulling us further and further away from each other, and that I think the idea of these town squares using technology to bring people together is a really interesting way to combat that ideology where people are, kind of in their phones and not interacting with people. So
yeah, so it's I've watched a lot of Apple keynotes, and I don't know that they've ever really talked about their stores, at least not at the level that they did in this keynote. And so maybe some foreshadowing going on there for things to come with Apple in the future.
I think, too, it's along the lines where we're trying to break down the stigma that, you know, your phone is more than just a phone. In fact, I think the thing I use my phone the least for is to make phone calls. And, you know, we're trying to explain that to people where it's like, hey, your phone can make studio quality video, and look at this, we have a 4-camera setup and we're adding graphics and stuff, and that's using phones and iPads. So I think it's kind of that situation that we're in too, where it's they're trying to educate people and show them what all is possible, what they have.
I think it'll be really good for how Apple's been really big the past few years on trying to build a community as well. I know they've constantly been pushing, you know, their stores are a friendly place, come in, have fun. But in reality, whenever I've gone to an Apple store, it's usually, help, this isn't working, please help me fix it. It's never been a stop when I'm in the mall to actually go and just spend some time. So turning it into this more community-based thing, especially with all the new features coming out, I think it's going to be a lot easier just to say, you know, hey, I've got this new phone, let me take this class and see how to use it better. I think it's going to really make that community.
Not just a shop where it's broke, fix it, but where you can go learn something and get some help.
You can learn how to use the technology you have better.
So some of the other things they talked about was the Apple Watch Series 3 has local LTE connection. You can make phone calls now. Siri talks to you, works with the AirPods.
Yeah, they're using the cellular to stream Apple Music, so you don't have to have music stored on the Apple Watch or have your phone with you. But you have to have a subscription to Apple Music to take advantage of that feature. But
probably has its own subscription to get that LTE service on the phone as well.
There was a different price point for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a different price point for the model. You can get it with or without LTE, and you might have to pay something to your carrier in addition to your phone bill. That we don't know yet, but we'll see what happens. Sure. It sounds like they're working on some deals, kind of vague on that part. I've never been super excited about the Apple Watch. Yesterday, it was interesting.
I've wanted an Apple Watch. I just haven't sprung to spend the money on it. I want something, like I want an activity tracker, but you know, if I'm gonna spend $150 on something like a Fitbit, I might as well hold out and spend $300 on an Apple Watch that does more than just activity tracking. But I don't know.
Yeah, yesterday the same. Like I never thought I would need an Apple Watch, but after hearing what they had to say, I was like, you know, I could probably wear one of those.
Mm-hmm.
It's good marketing.
It's good marketing. Maybe that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just
well,
good marketing.
The cellular signal on the Apple Watch makes me kind of wish I had it a couple weeks ago when we got stranded with our kayaks. So we.
Dude, is there like a short version of this story? I
haven't
heard this yet.
So.
And I kind of want to hear this.
Yeah, so we went kayaking and we take 2 vehicles and we leave our phones in the cars and we leave the keys. Or we usually bring a set of keys with us. We got to the end of a 4-hour kayak trip and did not have the keys to the car at the end point.
Oh, no.
And we didn't have phones, so we just kind of were stranded at the end of this kayaking thing. So the Apple Watch with cellular signal would have been great to be able to get a hold of, you know, someone to come pick us up and take us to our other car or anything. But
found some guy that worked at the park that was like picking up trash that
gave him a ride up to where we started. But
that's great.
Yeah, so I mean, like things like that where you don't typically take your phone. It would be really great to have that, especially since it's water resistant, swim proof.
Yeah, it's also positioned as kind of an athletic wear, especially when you look at products like Fitbit and smartwatches, and to not have to take your phone to really get the full functionality. I think that's going to be a big shifting point for the Apple Watch and what you can do with that. And wearables might be catching on. So we'll see.
I saw an article, I think it was today, and I'm not entirely sure on all the specs and whatnot, but I heard rumors that the Apple Watch is with the cellular and making phone calls, it's only going to last about an hour on the battery. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
They
We'll have
say-
to wait and see until
They
it
say they
comes
hold
out.
a full day charge, but yeah, with the cellular, who knows? Like if you're making phone calls pretty consistently on it, I don't know what the battery life will be like there. Because most of the time when you're wearing a watch, it's a passive thing. It's not like you're constantly on it like you are with your phone. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see what the battery life is like on that.
And I know for me, one thing that struck me was just the reliability of it because it's Apple. In the past, whenever they've talked about Apple Watches, I was a big user of the Pebble smartwatch, and I was always just, I've got basically the same thing on my arm. I don't need an Apple Watch. Pebble unfortunately went out of business last year, so that watch is not really functioning. And I've been looking into replacements. Fitbit's not exactly what I'm looking for, but in the back of my head, it's, am I going to spend another $200 on a watch that's going to go out of business a year later? So, it's also a thing where now I'm leaning towards Apple Watch because it's a reliable company, it's a reliable product, it's going to work. So I'm also in the might be getting an Apple Watch club at this point.
And that's an interesting point because we've seen the same thing with Switcher. We supported a product called the Motor Galileo at one point where you could remotely control a camera from across the room.
Mm-hmm.
The product was discontinued; they're no longer in production, and so we were looking for alternatives. And there's lots of different gimbals and motorized controllers, and that was something that was really important in our decision for what to do with that next integration and what we're doing with the DJI Osmo Mobile, because DJI is a more prominent company. It's the leader in the drone space, and we feel like they're probably going to be around for a while. So I think that's, depending on what you want out of a product, also something to take into consideration. And it was just kind of interesting to have experienced that here internally with Switcher and some of the things that we've done. And Angela's kind of feeling that on her decision for what to do on her watch. And also in that presentation, Apple showed that they have topped Rolex for the first time as
That was not a subtle
watches
move.
sold. It was humble brag.
Not even.
I feel like that's what you could call that entire presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, look at all this cool stuff we have.
I also noticed, I'd have to go back and really observe it to see if I missed any, but I started to notice about halfway through the keynote yesterday, almost every time they cut to an audience member who had their hand up in some capacity, whether they were scratching their head or waving, they all had an Apple Watch. And I started paying attention, and I think they only cut to shots of people's arms with Apple Watches. People were either like this or they were flashing the watch.
Maybe
so.
they handed them out before they went in the room.
That's yeah.
So, I mean, Apple Watch is really cool. Their stores are really cool. Let's get into the fun stuff.
Well, something I do want to hit before we get too deep. There was a lot of throwbacks to Steve Jobs in this presentation also, and they led the entire presentation with it, and they closed with it. And Apple as a company, it wasn't just Steve Jobs that got the thing going, but he was the face of the company and was really involved in a lot of the product decisions. And the word genius is thrown around a lot when we talk about what happened at Apple and who the company is and what he did. So this 10-year anniversary for the iPhone, they spent a lot of time kind of revisiting that and reflecting. And
yeah.
there was some cool foreshadowing in the presentation when they talked about all of the advancements that had come to the iPhone
With each iteration of the iPhone.
with each iteration. And throughout the presentation, they kind of came back to those points and talked about how they've all been improved in this most recent one. So that's where we're heading next. Quick note, there was some news on the Apple TV. There's a 4K version coming out with HDR. HDR is more color and depth and a more vivid picture. It was a word that was thrown around a lot at NAB this year. And if you look at just a standard 4K video and something with HDR, it looks a lot better. Watching that on our 1080p TV, it's kind of weird to try and think of looking at something that should look better on a screen that's not as good as what they're trying to show. But that's about all we really need to hit on with the Apple TV. They're finally kicking it up to 4K, and with HDR, if you're streaming or you're watching something on Apple TV, it's going to look really cinematic. And it's been around for a while. They're not the first to do it, but that's kind of Apple's game. They perfect and wait for things to play out. And I know Dan, as an editor, you made a comment that is kind of interesting that they jumped straight to 4K with HDR when in the post-production space there's a big demand for 1080p HDR just because the 4K workflow is not really there quite yet.
Well, it's more, I mean, and this doesn't really apply to us because I'm not editing in 4K or anything, but it's just those reference monitors are very expensive, like very, very expensive. So these big editing houses are, having to scramble to figure out how to edit this 4K video when, 1080 looks great.
And we're watching on tiny phones.
We're all watching on phones.
Tiny phones, yeah.
Tiny when I hold up the big iPhone, but it's still not quite the same. So let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
iPhones. The new iPhone 8 and iPhone 8 Plus.
Yeah, let's start there. So my too long didn't read version of the iPhone 8 is that it's an iPhone 7 with a new processor, a better camera, and wireless charging. I mean, that's, when you really get down to it, those are the...
Better camera, wireless charging.
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Faster yeah, is it worth it? That's the question. Is it worth it?
Like should I... I've got an iPhone 6S. I'm due for an upgrade. I need to get a new phone here soon. Is it worth me getting an iPhone 8, or do I just go for the iPhone 7?
I don't know. What are you have a 7 Plus, right?
Yeah, I have the 7 Plus. I think if you have the 7 Plus, it's the best camera for your money right now, and probably will still be the best camera for your money with the new iPhones that are coming out. If you're on maybe the next model back, like the 6 or the 6S, or maybe even the 6S Plus, there have been some big jumps in the camera since then. So if that's a core part of your experience and what you're doing, whether for photos or video, that's maybe something to take into consideration.
I tend to be on the every 2-year upgrade cycle. Like, for me personally, I'll buy whatever model is out, and then I'll wait at least 1.5 years, 2 years until I get another model. So I usually skip over generations. I think I went from I did a 4 and then a 5 and then a 6. But
what about you, Angela? What did you
know.
do for yours?
For me, it really just depends on the phone itself. I've done the every other year cycle. I've done the every year cycle. So for me, I went just my past couple ones, 5C to 6S was a big jump. And then last year I did 6S to 7, and that was amazing. But I've mentioned on the streams before, I use my phone constantly for photo and video. So anyone who would mention, that's really expensive for a phone, I basically bought a new camera that I can carry around. I don't have to carry my DSLR around. So for me, if it's someone, like if you're mainly using your phone for photo or video and you're still on the 6S, definitely go to the 8 or the 8 Plus. For the 7, for me, I'm not really feeling the 8 or the 8 Plus because they're so similar. If I upgrade with them this next year, it's going to be to the 10.
It's interesting to me, the idea of announcing the 8 and the 10 at the same event.
Do you know what my hypothesis or my theory behind that is?
What's up?
So my guess is they got rid of the headphone jack, and everyone was really upset about that. They didn't want to just completely get rid of the home button and have everyone yell at them for that too. So it's the newer version.
If you really want a headphone jack, keep your phone.
Yeah.
That's the short version. I'm a launch day person. I stood in line for the PlayStation 2 when it first came out. And who knows, maybe I'll get the 8 Plus and turn it in a few weeks later for the 10. No, that's not happening. But I think it comes down to what are your needs, and do you need to do something that's budget conscious? Are you using your phone to make phone calls, or are you a video buff? Are you taking photos?
That's true.
Do you want to take advantage of some of the new things that might only be possible with the newer devices? We still got to talk about the iPhone 10, so I think we can move into that. But iPhone 8 is it's a good incremental improvement.
Yeah.
Better camera, better processor, wireless charging.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I was kind of excited about, stereo audio.
Yeah.
On stereo speakers.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
it's like 25% louder.
Yes. And what was the other thing? Better. Does this one have a better battery? No, it's the other one, isn't it?
So, but actually, all of the new phones that are announced have better battery life, and they perform better in low lighting. So this is really important for video. If you're making video with an iPhone or an iPad, and some of you Switcher users out there that might notice this, if you're in a room that doesn't have studio lights, the video can be a little grainy. If you're doing a concert performance or something in a theater, or it's just not well lit, there's going to be a graininess to that video. So these new cameras supposedly perform better in low lighting, and part of that is due to the new A11 Bionic chip and what they're able to do there.
So fun.
They threw around some fun naming schemes here in this latest update. So that's something that could be a big benefit of these new cameras, is better performance in low lighting. So iPhone 10, is that?
Yeah, you ready to
Let's
move
do
on?
it.
Let's
iPhone
do it.
X.
So it's the $1,000 emoji machine.
An emoji.
Yeah, it's Animojis.
An emoji.
Animated emojis. Nick, come on. So the iPhone 10 edge-to-edge display, like that is the thing that everyone I think is mostly talking about.
Home button gone.
Considering the
there's the specs. There's some specs I've got up on the screen.
The competitors have all been doing edge-to-edge displays.
Samsung is.
I mean, like, they're winning that.
It's a Samsung screen.
And so, like, that's an interesting addition that they're kind of late to, I feel like. But no more buttons, so no more Touch ID. It's
no
Face
buttons
ID.
on the front. Like, there's buttons on the side. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
but
sure.
no more, like,
no more home button.
So no Touch ID. So they've introduced the Face ID. What are some other?
It's an OLED
OLED
screen.
Super Retina display.
Super Retina.
Super Retina.
So OLED has been around for a while. It's very thin. It's very bright, but it doesn't have as much contrast or color. And with this new iPhone, for years Apple has touted their Retina display, that there's very true, rich, deep color. And with the iPhone 10, the Super Retina display is the first time that they've really been able to take OLED and still maintain kind of the expectations that they set with the Retina display. So that was a big jump from a technology perspective of what they've been able to do with this. Also on that front screen, we've got the edge-to-edge display, but there's still the notch at the top. That's where your camera, your microphone, some of the sensors are. I think there's a screenshot here that shows all the stuff that's in that notch.
Infrared camera, flood illuminator, proximity sensor, ambient light sensor, speaker, microphone, front camera, and dot projector. All in that tiny bar.
So I think on the edge-to-edge experience, that could be a little annoying depending on what you're doing. We'll start using it. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away. If you're watching a video, you can't swipe it out of the way.
Well, looking at the screenshots of the phone while it's in use, they have the battery sensor and your other things up next to it, so it's really not taking up any more of the screen than you would normally be using.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
it's your Wi-Fi, your
feel
battery,
like
the time. Unless you're watching a video and there's something that absolutely has to be there, it's probably not a problem. I mean, I can imagine there's probably a way to scale it down or crop it or watch it normal.
Other phone makers have had to run into this before too, so like can't be that big of a.
So there's all kinds of threads on the internet about the notch, the evil notch, but I mean it's an edge-to-edge screen display. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about it.
I think within that notch, some of the cool things in particular is the depth sensor. So with this phone, there is no home button, but you're able to map your face and use it to access your phone if you don't want to put in your security key or your PIN. And it uses this depth sensor to actually see how far away things are. So you could be in a dark room with no lights and it's still going to work because it's able to map your face. It's
a little creepy, let's be real, but cool.
It's kind of like a 3D render or model of you, and your phone learns you. It's stored locally. It doesn't go out to a server and come back. With the Touch ID, I think it was 1 in 50,000
1 in 50,000, and this is 1 in a million.
And this is 1 in a million chance for a match. If they did make a comment, if you have an evil twin, it might not work. I think that means if you have a twin, it might have a hard time telling. But because of the depth sensor, you can't trick it with a photo. So if you had something that's flat, or someone's trying to dupe it, that could be a challenge. I think something that's a little scary about this is if other people are trying to access your phone and you're around, you do have to give your attention. Your eyes have to be open. You have to be looking at it. It can't be off to the side. But if someone were to get arrested and an officer grabbed your phone, they may just be able to point at your face and access your information.
I never thought of that.
So there are some security concerns.
Biggest security takes that I saw on Twitter right after the keynote yesterday.
Now, you don't have to enable Face ID. You can do just your passcode. You can use it as a backup if it doesn't work. So if you're really concerned about security, the passcode is probably the good fallback and safe. And it's still there. But that front-facing camera having the depth sensor also opens up some really interesting things from a development perspective. And we're kind of stewing on that right now and thinking about what might be possible with Switcher and video in the future. That is today only on the front-facing camera. The rear-facing camera has 2 lenses that can map an entire scene, that has more color that you can use to actually change the lighting in real time or after the fact, because it captures so much more information, but it doesn't measure depth in quite the same way as that image sensor on the front. So I would imagine with the iPhone 11 or whatever is next that maybe we'll see that on both sides. Another improvement, the front-facing camera is much higher quality, so if you're doing selfie video, the portrait mode effect is now possible on that front-facing camera because of the combination of the depth sensor and the regular sensor. So if you're doing a photo, you can get that kind of blurred effect, or the bokeh, the DSLR look with your selfie camera, and not just using the back camera when you're taking photos of other things.
The depth sensor is also what makes the animated emojis possible. So it maps your face and then makes the emojis animate to your facial expressions. It's so weird but so cute.
I mean, it's Snapchat for text messaging.
Sort of.
The one thing I'm wondering is, will the Animojis work between an iPhone 10 user and someone on another phone? Because I know a lot of features, like normal emojis, I can have a conversation with my best friend who doesn't have an iPhone, and we can still send emojis back and forth. But some of the iMessage effects are only iMessage to iMessage. Yeah. And, of course, it being an Apple event, they only showed iMessage to iMessage. But will the Animojis pop up for someone else?
One of the things I noticed was that when he clicked on the response from the other person, it opened like a video and didn't play in line with the messages. So that might mean that it saves as a small GIF or something and then sends it. Not a GIF, but it would have to be a video if there's audio, but something like that. So I'm hoping that it works for people who are not on Apple. But
so with the new phone and that image sensor, the Face ID, there's some neural network technology inside of the device to be able to map that from different angles, to store that locally on your device to learn who you are and what you look like from a security standpoint. And that takes a lot of processing power. There's a lot under the hood. And that means there's a lot more that we can probably do with this new phone that we might not be able to do on other devices. So there could be some features in the future that are iPhone 10 specific. As always, we try to keep things as backwards compatible as possible and work on as many devices as possible. But there's some really cool stuff happening here inside this new phone.
So one thing I'm really excited about with both the 8 and the 10 is the wireless charging, because then that opens up your Lightning port for other uses. So if you can charge your phone wirelessly, then you can use that port for Switcher specifically, you can use that for, what are the mini dongles that we plug into our devices for that. So that'll be really exciting.
Now, one thing I noticed immediately on the iPhone 10, this was in some of the early leaks and renders as well. It has the dual camera with the light sensor. It's a different orientation. So rather than being, if I'm holding my phone vertical
I think
at the horizontal landscape, the iPhone 10 has dual lenses stacked vertically. So if you have a iPhone case with the notch for the lens, even if the size of the new iPhone 10 is the same as the Plus, that lens orientation is different. So there's going to be a whole new line. This happens every time there's a new phone. They move the camera a centimeter and your old case no longer works.
Something else I noticed about the dual cameras opposed to the dual cameras on the 7 is that they've put the flash between the two cameras instead of putting it off to the side. I'm not sure what that does for them, but I thought that was an interesting choice. It always kind of bothered me on your phone and on the 6 that the flash is just kind of hanging out over here by itself. So like from an aesthetic point of view, I like the way they've put that together on the 10. So
and we could go on about specs all day. There's a screenshot. There's tons of articles online. We'll share some of those in the comments so that you all have access to those as well. Easy to find. The iPhone 10 looks really cool. There's a lot under the hood. The camera is really, really good. It performs better in low light, has wireless charging, and Face ID. Home button's gone. So those are some of the big changes. What's most interesting for us are some of the things that are coming on the software side with iOS 11. A lot of this has already been talked about in the Apple keynote earlier this year. Not a lot of talk about iOS 11. I think they've already done this as part of the reason, but also kind of waiting for developers to make new things that are only possible with this new version of iOS. iOS 11 will be available on September 19th. That's next Tuesday.
So
and
6 days.
It has folder management, so you can better organize your photos and videos. And
real quick, while Nick's going over these, here's a list of all the devices that are going to be compatible with iOS 11.
iOS 11,
so,
awesome.
Yeah, that's up there with you.
You can also drag and drop and multitask, so you can move between apps and share information. It's still a little unclear how much of this is going to work just natively out of the box, or if it requires coordination between different products. I think a lot of it's going to be dependent on the file structure and where things are saved. So if there's an app that saves directly to your camera roll, you'll probably be easy to move those around. So as an example, if you're using Switcher and you're setting up before a production, it may be easier to move between other applications to get things where they need to be. But multitasking can affect your network connection and can affect how the camera is used on your device. So if you're in the middle of a Switcher production, you're not going to want to use that multitasking effect. It could kill the connection from those remote cameras and could disable your camera feed. So multitasking is really useful. We've been doing some tests with iOS 11, but make sure you don't use it during a production. So Switcher's a little different than most apps in that regard, in that there's a constant connection to Facebook or YouTube, and that we need to maintain a connection between multiple devices, whereas a lot of native apps that are just on your phone don't have to kind of work with all of those different parameters. And from a development perspective, there's two things in iOS 11 we're really excited about. One is Replay Kit. So we saw recently YouTube announced that within the YouTube app, you will be able to record the screen and share that for streaming. So if you're playing a game on your phone, you can stream directly to your YouTube channel. You can do this through the notifications using Apple's Replay Kit. And another one that we're really excited about is AR Kit. And this opens up a lot of interesting applications and uses for mixed reality, where you can show virtual or digitized information over top of the real world. And not just over top of the real world, but pin it to a point or a location and give it context. So there's some really cool demos, examples we've seen of maps and being able to walk down the street and actually see a line on the road in front of you as you move your phone. And whether your phone is up, down, left, right, that line is always in the same spot. It's mapped to that physical location for where you need to go. One of the demos during the Apple keynote was a game that was mapped to a table, a multiplayer game. So you could be in the same room or playing with people from another location, and this table here in front of us could have nothing on it, and through our screen we can see this whole virtual world. And as you get closer, it gets louder. As you move around, it changes perspective, and everything is mapped and stays in that one place. So you could imagine at some point being able to do multi-camera video of things that aren't even real, that are just happening on a completely blank canvas, and being able to use that with something like Switcher Studio. Until we actually implement these, it's kind of hard to explain, but we're really excited about some of the new things that are possible with iOS 11, and we'll keep you tuned in as we make some progress on those. I think we got a screenshot of a dinosaur that was used in some of Apple's marketing just for funsies.
There's a dinosaur.
There's
a dinosaur.
Loving the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
iOS 11 will be dropping compatibility for the iPhone 5 and 5C. I think we've updated information on the website so that you all have access to that. Switcher does work on iOS 10 compatible devices. It will work on older devices, but it may not be available in the App Store. It may not receive updates in the same way. That's just kind of based on Apple's sunset policy and how they manage iteration through different versions of the iOS updates. So with Switcher Studio, we officially support iOS 10 and iOS 11. Really excited about iOS 11. That's available next week, September 19th. Anyone can download it. Word of caution, historically there have been bugs in iOS updates. If you want to be there early and use it, we have tested Switcher and it does work on iOS 11. If you have another device you can keep on iOS 10, it might be good as a backup or a safety measure just in case there are problems, so that you can continue to use the product for things that may not have been noticed or caught yet. And normally after a few weeks, Apple will be pushing updates and patches for anything that they see once they've opened it up to the general public. So iOS 11 has been in beta for a while. It's been available to developers for a few months, and that will be available for everyone next Tuesday on September 19th. And you can update it and know that Switcher will work, but would recommend maybe having another device that's still on iOS 10, or if you don't, maybe waiting a few weeks just to see if there's any patches or updates that come out from Apple for iOS 11.
Yep. So I don't think we talked about the 10's release date or anything like that.
No, or the 8. One of those are all going to be available.
So the iPhone 10, you can start pre-ordering it on October 27th, and it ships on November 3rd. So it's still a little ways off. Let me see if I can get to the 8.
Pre-orders.
Pre-order.
Do we say when pre-orders start for that?
The 27th of October.
27th. Okay. I need to get that on my calendar. Doing that right now.
Yeah. Let me get down to the 8 here. Okay, so pre-orders for the 8 start on the 15th. What's today?
Today is the
15th
12th,
Friday.
right?
So this Friday
13th.
you can start
Today's the 13th.
pre-ordering
Yes,
the iPhone 8, and they will start shipping on September 22nd. Those start at $699 for the 8, $799 for the 8 Plus.
Saved.
And then the iPhone 10 is at a starting price of $999.
That's for the 64 gig version. There is not a 128 gig version. Jumps to 256, and that's just shy of $1,200. I think it's $1,149 for the iPhone 10 at the higher capacity. Maybe not the phone for everyone, but if you are an early adopter, a lot of cool stuff there, and we're really excited to check it out. Also a great camera, so if you're doing photos or videos, probably something worth having in your arsenal, your toolkit.
Yep.
Again, the iPhone 7, 7 Plus are still really great phones. iPhone 8 is an improvement on that, but unless you have an older model phone, it might not be worth the jump, at least right away. This is all up for debate, and you do what's best for you. We'll share an article here in the comments. USA Today did a good write-up on some of the different options that are out there. I think the iPhone 6 is no longer available for purchase if you're getting it new. Obviously, there are refurbs and other distributors and resellers that had those out there.
Yeah, it's just going to be the 6S.
Yeah, so 6S, iPhone 7, 7, 8, iPhone 10. There's a lot of different options. The naming structure can get confusing. If you're going in to get a new device and you don't know exactly what you want, be sure to talk to somebody, and they can help walk you through what's available and what's going to work best for you.
Yep.
So, typically these broadcasts, we talk about industry news, strategy, some user videos, and things that are happening in the user group. This week, we really wanted to focus on the Apple update. There's a lot of information,
So
and
much information.
really affects what we're able to do, what we can bring to you, and what you all will be doing within Apple's ecosystem and purchasing decisions. And just thought it was worth spending some more time on this topic today. Didn't want to muddy it up with some of the other things that we normally do in our broadcasts. So anything you all want to hit on?
You guys covered it really well.
Are there any comments out there that we need to jump in on?
Nothing too crazy. There's some people saying, "Hey, how's it going?"
Hi.
All
Hey,
that
people.
good stuff. David said the new update is amazing.
We like to hear that.
Awesome.
For those of you that are just tuning in or haven't used Switcher yet or haven't updated recently, there was a big update to Switcher on Monday, and that was Switcher 3.4. That includes updates across the board. Brand new website, cool new video there if you want to go check that out, switcherstudio.com. You can also update the app in the App Store that has live text editing for lower thirds in full screen graphics. You don't have to go use Photoshop and build images and text ahead of time. You can still do that, but we have some templates baked right inside of Switcher. It makes it easy to get started with those. Excuse me. Also have support for KineMaster, so you can move files between Switcher and the KineMaster app for editing if you're using director mode. And aside from the app, there are big improvements in the dashboard. So if you log into your online account, a whole new look, a whole new set of features. If you're a legacy customer, you've been here for a while, or if you're on the annual plan, there's some special things in there for you all. We also have a My Video section, so any broadcast that you make with Switcher to Facebook or YouTube, you'll be able to see a history of those videos and get a share link. Annual customers will have a full history starting Monday and moving forward, where you'll be able to access all of those from your online Switcher account, a referral program, member discounts. Got some good deals from our friends at iOgrapher and Archon Mounts and .live and Switchboard, and there's a bunch of them in there. So annual customers that get that benefit. Also rolled out a public beta for Windows screen sharing. So if you log into your online Switcher account, you can download SwitcherCast for Windows beta. It does require Windows 10, and we've recommended some beefy computer specs for this first version. i7 dual-core processor, 8 gigs of RAM. That is, again, Windows 10. Mm-hmm. And we'll continue to be working on that and update it and push those to you all, but didn't want to keep it to ourselves anymore.
Yeah.
So go check that out.
I think that's about all the time we have.
I'm probably missing some stuff. There's a post on the website. Go check it out. SwitcherStudio.com. Big update. So happy that you all are able to tune in, that you've been able to use Switcher and give us feedback. We wouldn't be where we are today without you all. So thank you so much, and looking forward to what's next for Switcher.
All right. I think that will wrap us.
Yep.
Is that our sign off? All right. Tune in next week, Wednesday, 2 o'clock Eastern.
Back to our regular format.
Back to the regular format.
All right. We'll
All right,
talk
everybody.
soon. Take
Take
care.
care.
Hey guys.
Bye.
Bye.